Hello and welcome once again to Intro to Computer Games and Simulations from Lorain County Community College. I am Mike Substelny, the instructor this term, and I want to welcome all the students who are watching on cable television and on iTunes and on our video on demand system and even on YouTube. We're definitely on YouTube now this semester, and we're trying to get that closed captioning working that way. So this week we are in the third week of our adventure together, and we're going to be talking about, come on, wake up. What makes a good game today? As promised, we're going to be discussing fun. It's a topic we'll talk about a lot this semester, and today most importantly. We're going to start with a recap of a couple of things from last time. We talked about some key terms that are important to us and you had a quiz about. And one thing is players. All games must have players. Objectives. The player should have some kind of objective for a game to be considered a game. It shouldn't be pointless. A game must have rules or it is not a game. And a game will have procedures. It will have some way for the player to interact with the game. And that goes for computer games and board games and sports and everything else. All of these things must be there. But these do not necessarily add up to fun. You have to have a few more things for a game to be fun, and that's what we're going to begin talking about today. All right, today's topic being fun, and we will be in this book today, The Game Maker's Apprentice. I believe it is chapter 5 we're going to be reading this week. Yes, Game Design Interactive Challenges. So we'll be in chapter 5 of this book. We are not in Game Design Workshop this week at all. And in the chapter 5, they discuss evil clutches, which you made in your first week here, your first game, a dragon game with demon capturing your babies. And they show you the example of evil squares. This is on your disc that came with the book. And this is exactly evil clutches, except without the artwork, music, and sound effects. This red square does the thing of the boss demon, going up and down and releasing babies and demons. This blue square is one of the demons. This gray circle is, oh, you can barely see that. This gray circle here is one of the babies. This big gray circle is your character, the mama dragon, and that little gray circle is one of the babies that the mama dragon would like to rescue. I think not shown here is one of the fireballs you can shoot. And it behaves exactly like evil clutches. Same procedures with the arrow keys and spacebar to move up and down and fire. And it's still fun, even without the music, even without the sound effects, even without the nice graphics, just with just crude graphics, crude sound effects, bleeps and bloops, no music. It is still playable and almost as much fun as the evil clutches that your instructions show. And we're going to ask the question, why is it still fun? And the answer to that question is because Evil Squares has good game mechanics. And the book defines game mechanics as the basic rules and interactions that make a game fun to play. It is the fact that you can move your dragon up and down, and the speed that you move it up and down is just right to be challenging, and the speed the babies move and the rate the babies are released, all these things are just right to be challenging in this game. Let's talk about the interaction active challenge for the player. There are goals and there are rewards, as we discussed last time. It has more interactivity than a book, a toy, or a film that you might have for entertainment. There's as simple a game as Evil Squares is, it is still more interactive than a book. Unless that book is like a Choose Your Own Adventure book, in which case the book is also a game. It is more interactive than a film, unless that film is also a game. And it is more interactive than, well, probably more interactive than a toy. Toys can be pretty interactive. I'm not going to go there. And yet, it is possible to do even more by adding more to this game. And you can add goals, sub-goals, and rewards to the game. And we're going to explore that using the fancier version of Evil Clutches that exists on the disk that came with your textbook. I'm going to go to the computer screen and try to open that right now for you to see. I think down here under Resources, Chapter 5. Nope, that's not it. Game Maker. Games, Chapter 5. And let's look at the full-blown one, because we don't want to take a lot of time. Will this computer run this for me? Yes. Okay, here's a fancy version of Evil Clutches. And you can pick easy, medium, or hard. I'm going to pick hard so it goes fast. Hit spacebar to start the game. I can select my character, the mama dragon or the daddy dragon. Let's take the daddy dragon. And the game begins. You can see I'm losing health by getting hit by those demons. But I'm gaining points. Oh, I killed a baby. I lost some points. You can see my health bar up at the top. And that shield there gave me some invulnerability, so I can just take out those demons. I'm still kind of low on health here, and I have a negative score. Let's and I died. Okay, you can see there's a lot more interactivity, a lot more challenge, a lot more goals in there. I'm going to close that now, and let's go back to our regularly scheduled presentation. You could see in that game I had a reward for rescuing the babies, and I had goals of extra little sub-goals, like getting my power-ups. I had health power-ups and invulnerability power-ups coming across the screen there. So let's talk about some of those. The goals are a powerful way to add challenge, and by adding more goals, there was more challenge and more interest in Evil Clutches. And you could see Evil New 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 on the CD that came with your book for examples of these things. Rescuing 50 babies, it turns out, is an important goal. And you can adjust that, obviously, if you're the programmer. Sub-goals are an easy way to engage the player. And pretty much every game you will ever play has sub-goals. All right? Some of you will get a test question or a quiz question someday, and I'll ask, what were the sub-goals in this game? You will answer, there were no sub-goals. You will get no points for that answer. That is wrong. There are just about always sub-goals. For example, in this game, where rescuing 50 babies is a goal, because you get a bonus, rescuing 1 baby is a sub-goal toward that bonus, 1 baby. So does that make sense to you? It's a step toward it, something you have to do. So you see a baby coming across the screen, you move your dragon to catch that baby and rescue it. You are moving toward achieving a sub-goal that gets you toward the achievement of a bigger goal. In the original version of Evil Clutches, well, shooting 1 demon is a sub-goal to increasing your point score in the game, for example. There are pretty much always sub-goals that lead to achieving a bigger goal in just about any game you'll ever play. And adding more of them engages the player even more. So as we said, each baby rescued is a sub-goal achieved. Each demon killed is a sub-goal achieved. And when you rescue, what is this one? 31 hatchlings, and you get this point bonus in this version of the game. And the rewards for achieving these goals help maintain the player's interest. And so you've been getting some points for every single baby you rescued, and then you get a whole bunch of points for rescuing, I think in this case it's 31 babies. In the version I was playing, I think it was 50 babies. When you reach that sub-goal, you get an extra bonus. Pinball machines did a lot of that. All right, let's talk about the psychology of sub-goals. This is one of the Bejeweled games. I think this is Bejeweled Blitz. And part of having sub-goals, of making these various matches to get power-ups and explosions in your Bejeweled type games, is at the end of the game, the player could say, oh, I was so close. I had that gem on there. If I could just have detonated that one gem, I would have made X goal. I would have gotten more points. I would have whatever. And makes the player want to play again. The Bejeweled games are really famous for making you want to play again. A nice little 1-minute commitment, that's not so much. And to explore this further, we're going to go back to looking at that game I don't like so much, that Lord of the Rings for the PlayStation 2, made by Vivendi, not the EA game. The EA game was good. The Vivendi game is the one I disliked. All right, in this game, the player does become Frodo Baggins, one of the main characters of the Lord of the Rings saga. And Frodo starts the game running around the Shire. Specifically, he starts running around his house. For a long time, he's just scampering about his house looking for things. He can't find things that are in his house. You have to search his house. Even though you're playing him, you don't know where he keeps things. So your first goal is to learn where things are in your house. That's a kind of an unusual and kind of boring goal, and let's explore why that is boring. Another thing he does in the early stages of the game, he helps the hobbits of the Shire out with their everyday troubles. And he has his little adventures running around the Shire, doing his things. And the reason is because Frodo has this purity meter that's important, because if you know the story of the Lord of the Rings, that the ring is kind of evil and it corrupts you, and he's the only one who can carry it because he's so pure. That's part of the story. And so you've got this purity meter with Frodo, and he has to do these good deeds to get a good purity charge at the beginning of the game, to make him nice and pure. And throughout the game, when he does good deeds, his purity goes up, and when he does bad deeds or uses the ring, his purity goes down. Now, good deeds can be challenging sub-goals, and some of the things he has to do in the Shire are challenging. I'll grant that. But the things he does in the Shire, running around for the first, it seemed like 10 hours of the game, are not dangerous at all. He's just running around doing these good deeds. As tricky as they can be, there's no danger in that. Now, this Fellowship version was popular with Tolkien fans who really got into running around the Shire and being a hobbit, doing good deeds for the other hobbits. If your fantasy all your life was to be a hobbit in the Shire, interacting with the other hobbits, you probably loved this game. And it's filled with action, and yet action gamers panned it. And you can find reviews online of how most mainstream gamers disliked this game. And to understand why, we're going to compare it to a much, 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 much more popular game, Grand Theft Auto 4. Actually extremely similar. And believe it or not, this character, Nico Bellic, he also has a purity meter, just like Frodo does. Believe it or not. In Grand Theft Auto 4, they call it a wanted level indicator. It's the stars up there that go up as his wanted level goes higher and higher and higher. That wanted level indicator does exactly the same thing that the purity meter does. By being bad, Nico's wanted level goes higher and higher and higher. And if Nico's wanted level gets too high, or Frodo's purity level gets too low, the game will end very, very quickly. Forces will close in on them, capture them, the police will shoot him, or the Dark Riders will take Frodo. Either way, it brings an end to the game very quickly. Yet these two games, even though they have that same game mechanic in there, do not have the same feel at all whatsoever in any way. Difference is, from the beginning of the game, when Nico first gets off the boat from his Eastern European home, he can face danger. If Nico wants to, he can go out there and start beating people up and get in trouble right away. And a lot of players do that in this game. So even though Frodo and Nico both challenge the player from the very beginning with interesting and challenging things they can do, Frodo starts with no opportunity to get himself in any danger at all when he's just running around the Shire doing good deeds. Whereas Nico could die at any moment, or at least get hospitalized at any moment in that game, just by the mischief he gets up to. All right, let's talk about the conflict and danger. In the Shire, Frodo's conflict comes from these petty squabbles between the hobbits, mostly, and making peace between his hobbit friends. Isn't that nice? Whereas Nico's conflict is dangerous. He gets in street fights. He deals with drug dealers. He steals cars and carjacks and things like that. He's in dangerous conflict. Risky conflict, for those who don't like violent games, is what's important. So while we talked last time about resources, boundaries, outcomes, and challenge, they're all important, but let me step aside so you can see. Risk is more engaging. Lest you think that I'm advocating violence is the only way to add challenge. It is not. Risk is how you can add challenge to the game. And at the beginning of this Fellowship of the Rings game, there's really not much at risk. The worst that can happen is Frodo starts the game with a low purity level. And actually, you can't even progress in the game until you've done the good deeds anyway. So it doesn't matter very much. Whereas Nico, when you're playing Nico, you have risk all the time. Let's talk about the risk in Evil Clutches. If you shoot a baby, you lose some points in Evil Clutches, even in the basic version. If you touch a demon, the game ends like that. And these are punishments for doing poorly in the game. You don't want to touch a demon. You don't want to shoot a baby. And your book brings up the concept, and this is why I like this chapter in this book, it brings up the concept of unfair punishment, which is not discussed in your other book, but it's discussed in this book. Unfair punishment, you've probably all experienced in a game, and you were unhappy when that happened. It took some of the fun out of the game. Players expect rewards for achievements. They expect punishment for mistakes. Unfair punishment is where you punish the player for doing what they're supposed to do. In this case, this is an actual screenshot of me playing Evil Clutches, and I am about to be punished. You can't quite tell why I shot this fireball that's going to hit my own baby there, but there was a demon coming right at me. And I had to shoot that demon to save myself from ending the game. I would have died if I didn't shoot that demon. But the way Evil Clutches is written originally, the fireball hits the demon and the fireball keeps going. Some of you corrected that in your games. The fireball hits the demon, fireball and demon are both destroyed. In that case, you don't get unfair punishment. In this case, I'm about to get me some unfair punishment out of this version of Evil Clutches. And that is something that frustrates players. Oh my gosh, I shot a demon and I lost 500 points because I killed my own baby. That's an example, and some of you, I'm proud to say, did correct that. So conflict is good, but players instinctively believe that punishment should have justice. You should only be able to shoot your own baby when you've made a mistake, not when you've done the right thing, especially when the baby wasn't there when you first launched the fireball. So player who's a good aim in evil clutches and only hits the targets they intend to hit should never be punished, and yet they will be punished in the original version. All right, let's also talk about control overload. I think both books discuss this. The games you're making in this class generally will use the keyboard for controls. In your career, you will probably make games that use game controllers and mice and things like that, all kinds of controls. And the keyboard, PC keyboard or Mac keyboard, offers a lot of possibilities for controls. And players do enjoy the power to make decisions with their QWERTY keyboard there. But if you give them too many keys to do too many things at the same time, you get what they call control overload. And this is a chance to make too many decisions too quickly. This is a control screen from Artemis Spaceship Bridge Simulator, which is the engineering control screen. This has a lot of decisions for the chief engineer of your starship to make. Fortunately, they do not come at you too quickly. This is actually a really good control layout. But were all these decisions for these power levels and these coolant levels and sending your damage control parties around and everything that you can do in this game, if they all came at you at once, this would definitely be control overload. But the pace of this game is pretty good. So it's not the number of controls necessarily, it's how many you need to use at once that's in the problem as I'm about to describe. Your textbook says that most people can remember between 5 and 9 things at once. A really elite gamer is in the 9 category. Maybe go up a little higher than that. That's on page 93 of the Game Maker's Apprentice. So more than 5 controls, some of the humans out there that would be playing your game will be experiencing control overload. You can have more than 5 controls as long as the player doesn't have to use all of them at the same time, as we're showing with Artemis. And context-sensitive controls can help. We're going to experience context-sensitive controls this week in your games because we're going to be making Galactic Mail this week. This is a fun game. It's a spaceship game. And in Galactic Mail, you have no weapons. Yeah, right. The game comes with no weapons, but some of you are going to make this game violent, I know. There is no evil character in this game, but there is plenty of danger. The rules of this game are very simple. You control this spaceship that flies around from moon to moon, delivering the galactic mail. There are asteroids flying around randomly, and the moons also fly around randomly, and you must not hit an asteroid. That's it. The asteroids are not malevolent. They don't seek you out or anything. They just fly straight lines. And yet there's plenty of danger, and you can crash your rocket ship pretty easily in this game. And is this conflict? The asteroids flying around, it does not seek you out. It's just going in a straight line. You're the one with all the only control of anything going. And, well, the answer is yes. There is conflict between you and these asteroids, even though they're not conscious of you. And the context-sensitive control in Galactic Mail is you have the space bar in this game to launch your rocket from the moon. That control only works in the context of being landed on the moon, which is why some of you will also use that space bar, I think, to give your player a fire button and shoot a torpedo or a laser beam or something out the front of your rocket or the back of your rocket or whatever violent thing you choose to add to the game. That control will be available to you in context. The space bar only works in the context of being docked on the moon. All right, that is it for this week. Next time, we're going to introduce formal elements and dramatic elements. We're going to be back in the textbook Game Design Workshop. So until next week, we'll see you in lab in Intro to Computer Games and Simulations. Bye-bye.